You know, this week it was all about getting out the outback, getting out the Nullarbor, cycling roads I'd cycled before. I was remembering the big climbs in the Adelaide Hills. Absolutely beautiful. It's beautifully gradual, and it was one of the most scenic parts of the trip so far.
So this week we passed the halfway mark, which psychologically for Mark must be a massive boost.
You know, I got clocked over 9,000 miles. Something that felt like a long way off. I was kind of telling myself it didn't matter. The reality is when I got there, oh, it felt fantastic. I'd been completely kidding myself that it didn't matter. It was actually lovely to stop and celebrate with the team.
We've just now got to continue to maintain that good steady rhythm, and there should be no reason why he can't get around the world in 80 days.
So often the case, I'm finding with this trip, a massive high is immediately followed up by a huge low.
We were benefiting from really strong tailwinds, which was improving progress, and Mark was making really good mileage. And it was looking like we were going to be arriving in Brisbane a little bit early. But then, just as we came through Melbourne, we knew it was in the forecast Mark was going to get a day of headwinds.
The big story in Australia, I always knew would be the wind, is at points, being my greatest friend, at points absolutely battered me. The toughest headwinds I've had on the whole trip.
He's had some really extreme mental highs and lows. He's been hurting all over. He's had, more specifically, a few Achilles niggles. His feet have been particularly sore this week with having to sit down and pedal all day into a headwind and the impact through those feet. I'm
not getting any injuries, but it's a very fine line. Apart from this cough, which I can't seem to shake, which I've had since Russia, there's nothing I'm too concerned about. He's not reporting feeling particularly poorly, but he's reporting his throat feeling a bit rough. So we've just been managing that again with some strepsils, lots of hot honey and lemon drinks, some additional vitamin C, some other supplements, some zinc to try and boost his health as much as possible and keep on top of it. So unfortunately on Wednesday, we were involved in a bit of a car accident where we were shunted from behind.
It was a difficult day for everybody, but in many ways we were kind of fortunate that it happened where it did. You know, if an accident was going to happen, we were really lucky it happened just there. During that day, we were due to drop off Tim and Fleur, two of our team, at the airport to fly ahead to New Zealand to get the vehicles ready there. A lot of our equipment was already bagged up and ready to go.
Claire was the first one probably out of the vehicle, I reckon, because she was in the passenger seat at the front. Mark saw that there was a toddler in the car that had come into the back of us, and so straight away she ran over to try and help out there. I
very quickly jumped out of the vehicle and went to assist in the vehicle behind us, where there was a young girl and her one-year-old son.
We had to obviously assess the situation, make sure nobody was injured, and then rapidly work out a plan that we could get Mark back on the road with minimal delay.
Together we came up with a pretty good plan. We got Mark's old friends from his previous trip. He was going to meet us for riding anyway. He chipped in and helped us with his vehicle, so that became the follow vehicle for the rest of the day. And apart from the vehicle being different, we sort of resumed our normal roles.
That was sorted pretty quickly, and by about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, things were running pretty much as normal again. And considering that the crash had happened about 10 o'clock in the morning, I don't think things could have been any smoother than they were.
The combination of the crash and then some brutal headwinds, it's meant that my last 4 days to Brisbane have been massive. I was joined by some cyclists in the afternoon, really enjoyed the company. When I was then left alone, I couldn't get focused. I was more sore on the bike and I was really struggling. I really hit rock bottom. So whilst I loved being joined and it was really great to have some chat with cyclists and locals, I found it twice as hard being left alone again on the bike. So that ability to stay in the zone and stay focused, I've been finding is so important.
We had been ahead of the schedule. Looked like we were going to get an earlier flight, which was good. But now with the headwinds and the incident, that's put us back. It means Mark's got to extend his riding hours. We've got to think about New Zealand. New Zealand's going to be tough. You know, we could have some hard weather. There's a lot of climbing to be done there. So we can't stretch things too much this end. And that be then at the expense of the next stage.
The reason it's so important for me to have this focus and to really push myself towards the end of Australia, the reality is it will put me about 8 hours ride time ahead of getting the later flight, which is equivalent to 120 miles, and that is worth fighting for.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Mark to, you know, to make the earlier flight.
I was incredibly tired this morning at 4 o'clock. It's one of the first mornings that I had to properly be woken as opposed to just waking up ready to go. And the final day I've left myself with about 280, 290 miles. It'll be my biggest day's riding since the start of the trip. How sweet would it be if we could get out of here with a small win by putting some time in the bank?
So yeah, hopefully it'll be a very slick transition like it was in Perth. That's all we can hope for.